Welcome to the Smiling at the Future podcast. My name is Christy Rose, and this is my pursuit to glean practical wisdom on femininity, homemaking, finances, relationships, and singleness from the God-fearing men and women in my life. Hope you enjoy this journey with me as we learn to smile at the future. Hello, ladies. So many of you have become friends, and the longer I get to know you, the more you feel like family. And speaking of family, I love being able to bring my family on the podcast and share them with you. In years past, I've interviewed a couple of my brothers and even my mom, but today I get to introduce you to Uncle Dave on a topic that he is very passionate about and has even a history of starting a ministry in this area. And with summer around the corner, I thought this was just the right time to encourage you all to get outside and the benefits of being in God's creation. So here is my conversation with Uncle Dave. Well, Uncle Dave, I'm glad that I get to share my favorite uncle with my listeners today, and I give them permission to call you Uncle Dave as well, as so many of my friends already do. You're an uncle to many. But before we jump into our topic today, would you share a little bit about yourself and where God has you in life and ministry?
Oh, wow. It's hard to summarize that in a in a sentence or two. But first of all, let me just say I'm so delighted with the name of your podcast, Smiling at the Future. I think that that's a beautiful name, and it's uplifting and full of hope and joy. And that's the way we want to approach each morning. As for myself, I've worn many hats, and what we're going to talk about today is just one of them. But I work currently as a science reporter. So my website, crev.info, has almost daily entries about creation science and answers to evolution, have additional writers writing for it. And so you might want to look that up. Crev.info, crev.info is a good source of creation information. I also worked in the space program at JPL for 14 years, and I've worked as a software engineer, designer, and also worked with youth earlier in my life. So I've worn a lot of hats, like I say.
And you've been super invested and involved in my life and in my siblings' lives over the years. You just were always present at every family birthday or event or taking us on adventures. And so just have so many wonderful memories about Uncle Dave. And you are a jack of all trades. You're kind of like a Renaissance man. I think of that often about you write music, you love adventure, you love technology. You have many passions and interests. I think almost every time I talk with you, you're bemoaning the fact that you don't have more time because you have too many things you want to do. You're just very creative. But for as long as I can remember, you have been passionate about getting people into God's creation. And so many of my childhood memories are of going on backpacking trips in the Sierra Nevadas or in the Grand Canyon, camping trips, day hikes, fossil digs, cave explorations. I've had a pretty adventurous life, and I think most of it is thanks to you and in leading those trips and inviting me and my family along. But there are deeper reasons that you're passionate about God's creation beyond just adventure and recreation. So I would love for you to share about the ministry Creation Safaris that you started many years ago and what motivated you to start that.
Yeah, Creation Safaris was a spur of the moment thing that just, it's like a thought bubble appeared in my head, like a light bulb over my head or something one day when I was in an adult Bible class of young adults, mostly single, and they were announcing the social events coming up, things outside of church that they wanted to do. So they were listing things like a concert or a movie or a show. And the thought bubble appeared in my brain. Hey, these are all city activities. Can't God put on a better show? So I thought, well, I could complain about that, or I could do something positive about it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to arrange some nature activities for the social calendar. And so I got these approved by the leader. And the first one back in 1984 was a bicycle ride and fossil hunt, believe it or not. I actually had 10 people sign up for that, and we rode our bicycles to a place where I knew you could find fossils in the rocks. And we had a wonderful time, and they were amazed to see, seashells and other things coming right out of a cliff a long way from the ocean. So that was a good hit. And then the second one was a star party. I took people up on Mount Pinos, where you've been many times, and we looked at the stars through telescopes, and that blew people away. The third one was not quite so popular. My first Sierra backpack, I only got one guy to show up for that. But we had a good time. We had a wonderful time. But so a few people came at first, but after a while, the word got around and people started seeing the photos and videos that we were shooting, and they go, wow, that looks like fun. So we were off and running, off and hiking, perhaps I should say.
And I just have to give the shout out to the star parties because so many of my friends love that yearly tradition. And we've continued doing those to this day, but just so fun to go out on top of a mountain away from city lights and to see. I mean, we see everything from shooting stars to you can see planets, you can see the band of the Milky Way galaxy. It's just incredible. And so many people don't even realize that that is out there, that that's available to them. They spend their whole life in the concrete jungle, so to speak. But I would love to know what the particular, like, spiritual and physical benefits that someone can gain from spending time in God's creation.
Yes, absolutely. That's so important to this ministry because a lot of Christians like to go camping, but they never learn anything. And so I put together an acronym that represents the three themes that we try to cover: A, W, and E. What does that spell? Awe. And we want to increase our awe of God on these events. So A stands for adventure, and that involves stretching yourself a little bit, trying something you've never done before, and getting out, try new things, gain physical fitness, pushing yourself. Those are some benefits of what we do, but not the only ones, not the most important ones. The next one, W, is worship. So we want to worship God while we're out on the trail and out on a camping trip or looking at wildflowers or looking at the stars. So we study the creation to grow in our awe and gratitude of God. And so that's very important. And the third is education, because, like I say, a lot of people love to camp and Christians love to camp, but they never learn anything. See, so we get out there and we learn about our surroundings. We study the plants, we study the animals, we learn about what we're looking at and how amazing it is. I remember on one safari, I took people out on a local trail and we studied plants that are similar to ones that are described in the Bible. So we went on a Bible plant safari and looked at representatives that are close to like hyssop or the wildflowers that Jesus spoke about, saying, the lilies of the field, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. So we find representatives that are similar to the ones he would have looked at while he was teaching. And so that was a lot of fun. So education, we learn about the surroundings, we learn about intelligent design, the evidence for creation that opposes evolution, and we just enjoy the beauty of what we're looking at a deeper level by learning about it.
Well, and I know going back to just even the character building that happens on those types of trips. I mean, I was thinking about a few. You learn courage, you learn how to do hard things. There's many times when, I'm thinking I can't do this. I know we many times have done cliff jumping in the Grand Canyon, and you're looking down from a 40 or 50-foot cliff that you're about to jump off into water, and you're thinking, this is a bad idea. I don't want to do this. But you do, and you end up building courage by facing your fears, doing hard things, and that builds character and even perseverance. Those long trips that we took. I think the longest one, I remember it to this day, it was 7 days of backpacking and it was one of the North Fork of the Kings trips. And you had this funny thing. You would bring a scale and we'd weigh ourselves before and after backpacking trips. I lost 10 pounds in 1 week on that trip. I think we hiked 60 miles. And it's, when you're doing Sierra hiking, it's not just level. You're going up and down passes and it's rugged, it's hard. Yeah, carrying food for 7 days makes for a heavy pack. But when you come off of a trip like that and you're like, wow, look what, just one foot in front of the other, look what we were able to do. And so you build perseverance, and those things translate into our spiritual walk as well. And so I think just going on these trips over the years has given me an appreciation for God's creation in ways that I probably wouldn't have had before, more opportunities to see things, to learn about things. Like you said, education, you were teaching us about plants and star constellations and all kinds of things. And like that just, it did fuel my worship of the Lord when you're seeing his creativity and his power displayed. You worship him more. So I would say to the listeners, if you're struggling with worshiping God and seeing how big and great he is, spend time outside, study nature, and I think that's going to fuel that for you.
You're absolutely right about the character building that comes in, and that's a big topic that we could discuss in detail if you wanted. But yeah, the learning courage, learning perseverance, and yeah, you're struggling with a pack on your back trying to go up to the top of this pass. So you're sweating and you're tired and breathing heavy, but you can do it. And when you get up there, it feels so good, doesn't it? To say, I made it. I made it up here to Silver Pass or whatever. So you've had a lot of great experience in that. And the cliff jumping she's talking about Havasupai Canyon as part of the Grand Canyon. And that's a beautiful place. Unfortunately, it's hard to get to now because the demand has gotten so great because of Instagram and it's hard to get permits. But I took people there 8 times between 1998 and 2013. And yeah, Christy, you came on many of those and your brothers did. And wow, just a paradise down there of swimming holes and places to jump into the water. So we've had a lot of fun. But you really get to know people better when you go hiking and camping with them, don't you? I mean, you don't see them in there all prettied up best. You see them get dirty and struggle with things and camping in a tent and getting up in the morning without their hair brushed or whatever. So you get to know people a lot better. And that's another benefit, I think.
Yeah. One of the other things I was thinking about too is I remember whenever we would come back from a backpacking trip, we would get in the car, turn it on, whatever music was playing, all of a sudden sounded so loud. I think being away from technology and distractions and noise, you get used to the calm and the peace of nature. And that always struck me, like what we get used to with technology and then stepping away from it for a time is so just refreshing to your body and your soul. And that's one thing that I was thinking about too with camping or backpacking. It's renewing your body and your spirit. I mean, you come back, you're physically tired for sure, but you're spiritually refreshed just by spending that quiet solitude out in nature. And Jesus was such a model of that. And even his ministry, stepping away from crowds, going alone out into the wilderness to pray. And so I think if you can plan that into your year, I mean, I used to have this thing where I'd call it my daily dose of God's creation. And at least once a day, I would try to find some way to be in God's creation, if it was a hike or a walk or whatever I could fit into the schedule.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a great point about just the silence. I mean, how often do you get away from the noise of your environment and just out there on a trail looking at a tree or something and maybe just hearing a bird in the distance and how healing that is. And in my science reporting, I often run across articles that talk about the healing potential of nature. And even secular scientists know this, that there's therapy in looking at the beauty of nature. It can help with depression. It can help people who are in hospitals recovering from a surgery. If they can just look at nature pictures on a screen on their TV or whatever, that they heal faster. And people with mental problems or autism or anger and other things, there's something about beauty of nature that is very therapeutic. In fact, maybe you've heard of animal therapy, where people will take like miniature horses or dogs or cats into hospitals, and the patients get a chance to pet them and look at them. A good friend of mine has a miniature parrot that he takes to hospitals with permission, and he goes around to the patients, and he's got this on his finger, and the people just light up when they see this beautiful little creature. And he lets them put it on their finger, and they look at those little beady eyes and those colorful feathers, and it just does wonders for them. And he uses that as an opportunity, as a lead in to talk about his faith. And it's a great ministry he has. So people know that nature heals. And I would encourage each of you, like Christy said, to just get out, just look out the window at a tree and gaze at it for a while. And think about this beautiful object here that grew out of the dirt from a little seed. How did it do that? And the more we know about biology, the more we marvel at the details at the cellular level that make all this happen. The code in DNA and the molecular machines that run all these complex processes. It's absolutely mind-boggling. So that's what I encourage people on safaris to do, is not just to look at things and say, oh, that's pretty, and then change the subject or look at something else, but actually study in depth what's going on to make what you're looking at look so beautiful. It's not just happening. It was all designed by a good and faithful God who loves beauty and just overwhelmed our planet with beauty to enjoy.
Now, the Bible is full of passages that talk about God's creation, and particularly in the Psalms, but I would love to know what passages are your favorites in particular.
Well, that's a good question. And there's lots to choose from. In fact, in some of my presentations on creation at churches and schools and stuff, I would take out a roll of paper, and where I had printed out all the verses that I could find about creation. And I would unroll this. It was like 25 feet long, and just unrolled right along the floor to show that creation is not a minor topic in the Bible. It's all over. In fact, the most quoted book in the New Testament is Genesis, because all of our Bible doctrines are founded on the doctrine of creation. And I'd hasten to add, too, that creation is not just about the past, okay? It's about the past, the present, and the future. Because in the past, God created all things. In the present, He's sustaining all things. And in the future, there's going to be a new creation and a new earth. So I thought about this, and I thought, we're always going to be God's creatures ourselves. And our bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made, as we know. And we're always going to be surrounded by God's creation. So we have to embrace that, and realize that creation is our very essence. And it's something created to give us joy and fellowship with God. So about particular Bible verses, I think Psalm 104:24 is a great one. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your possessions. Now that verse, in fact, is very common among creation scientists, and another one too, Psalm 111:2. The works of the Lord are great, studied by all who have pleasure in them. And that verse is actually inscribed at Cambridge University in their science lab. And of course, there's famous ones like Psalm 8, when I consider the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have ordained. What is man that you are mindful of him? Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. And a couple of surprising ones, I think, in Revelation are good to mention. Revelation 4:11, Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created. Another one that I think deserves more attention and preaching on is the everlasting gospel in Revelation 14:7, where you have this mighty angel that proclaims over this world that is being judged with an important message. And he says with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water. That's a great verse. So a lot to choose from. Another thing we would do on safaris on backpacking trips sometimes is memorize hymns. We sing a lot of these hymns and we were familiar with them in church, but we would actually memorize all the verses. We'd stop at a rest stop and we'd practice reciting. And so we'd learn all the verses of How Great Thou Art, or I Sing the Mighty Power of God, or This Is My Father's World. That's kind of our Creation Safari theme hymn, I think. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee. Oh, worship the King and others. So that was another part of the worship of aspect of Creation Safaris. So yeah, the Bible is full of creation passages, and it comes alive when you study the details of what he has made, and it glorifies God and it increases our sense of awe and wonder.
And one thing I know for me that's been encouraging as I'm meditating on God's care about his creation is that, those, when you see how God takes care of what he's made, it just strengthens our trust that he will continue to care for us. One passage that I think of often is Matthew 10:29-31. And that's, are not two sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father, but even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. And anywhere you live, you're going to see birds. And so I feel like that's a verse that comes to mind often when I'm anxious or worried of like, no, Lord, I'm more value than even the birds. The hairs on my head. And then you already mentioned Matthew 6:28-30, but that one is, and why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? So I think nature just reminds us of those passages and reminds us of God's care. And speaking of God's care, I would love to know your perspective on how Christians are to care for God's creation and steward it. What does that look like? Because we see in the world kind of a warped perspective of that, where they elevate animals and nature even over human life, and they kind of worship that instead of God. They worship the creature rather than the creator. But what is a right view? What does that look like for a believer to be a good steward of God's creation?
Okay, well, do you want the big answer or the short answer? Because you've opened a huge topic there. And the big answer, which I'm not going to go into here, involves policy and principles of stewardship. And there are organizations that actually focus on that. For instance, the Cornwall Alliance is a network of theologians and scientists and economists, politicians who look at biblical principles of stewardship. And you can look at their website, and they have articles and videos and podcasts and all kinds of things about that, trying to answer the the wrong perspective that we see so often by the secularists who just exalt creation and they minimize human exceptionalism. And so we want to have answers to that. And that's a big topic. But the short answer is just how do we treat nature when we're out hiking or when we're out camping? And just using common sense and unselfishness. So the goal when you go out into nature is three little words that are common among people who like to hike, and it's called leave no trace. All right. The goal, what you want to do is just leave things as you found them so that the next person along the trail is going to think, wow, I'm the first human being to see this. and and so of course things like if you pack it in, you pack it out. You don't leave any trash on the trail. And in fact, you could even do better than that by leaving things better than you found it, by taking a little sack and picking up tin cans or bottles or other things that other people have left and make it even better than you found it. Of course, don't carve on your name on trees and rocks like some people do. In fact, junior boys are agents of entropy here. So you got to, if you have young boys, you got to teach them to respect nature and not to push over rock formations or things like that. Avoid wandering off trail or creating new trails if that's not necessary. It may be fun to go waltzing through the wildflowers there, but you may leave tracks and stomp on beautiful flowers that others would enjoy. So things like that. Use existing fire rings instead of creating new ones. Now, a couple of months ago, I took two of your brothers out camping in Arizona, and we had a great time, and it was cold at night, so we built campfires. But you would never know that there was a fire there because after making sure the fire was dead out in the morning and no hot spots or anything, we dug a hole and buried the ashes and covered it over with dirt. And you'd walk by there and think, nobody's ever been here before. And that's the goal. If you shoot guns, and I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, I think that's great. Gun shooting is fun for sport and recreation, but don't leave shotgun shells lying around on the ground. You might consider picking up the shells and packing them out so that you're not leaving a mess. So, like they say, take only pictures, leave only footprints, and that's a good principle for us as individuals to remember.
I know I've seen even that principle carry through in my life in other areas whenever I'm staying like at a hotel or using a public bathroom or something. Not even leave no trace, but leave something better than you found it. So if there's trash on the ground, even if it's not your trash, you can pick it up and just, yeah, be different from the world in that way. But there are so many Christian ministries that you could sign up for to do backpacking trips. Uncle Dave, your creation safaris, you're not doing those any longer, but I'm sure that if the listeners, if their interest is piqued and they want to go try to do that and do some camping trips, do some research. I'm sure you'll find plenty of organizations that you could sign up with and do those types of trips. But do you have any parting words that you would leave with our listeners today?
Well, this has been such a joyful ministry for me. What I would like to do is inspire other people to think about these principles and the ministry that I've had and consider how maybe you could do something like this. It might be unique, like maybe you could have a ministry to the disabled or a ministry to children or a ministry to the elderly or just all of the above, kind of like I did. So, yes, think about how the Lord might use you if you love nature, and you don't have to do it all yourself. You can borrow experts on other things. You could have people like cooks for food to provide food to the group. You can borrow drivers, bus drivers perhaps, and others, and you can borrow teachers, scientists. If you're not a scientist yourself, you can find creation scientists who can explain things and come along and do that part, or preachers. So it's best to get the buy-in. If you do this as part of a church ministry, get the buy-in of the elders in advance so that they're in favor of this. And if it's done by an organization, you might want to check insurance policies and things like that so that you keep out of trouble and make sure you're prepared for anything. But what a joyful opportunity to take people to experience creation, not just to learn about it in books, but to see it with your own eyes. I like to think of creation as a 360-degree surround sound audio-visual resource that's out there for all of us to learn from. So you can find more about this on creationsafaris.com. If you click on the front page, you can see some videos of us in action. And that's the best way actually to appreciate what we're talking about here, is to see pictures and videos. Plus, I have the Creation Evolution Headlines website I talked about, where you can learn about the science of creation, crev.info. I also have a YouTube channel with beautiful pictures of nature. It's called the Geographic Artistry channel, which you can look up, and you can have hours of just beautiful nature photography, drone photography, and Sierra mountains and deserts and you name it on your large screen TV for your enjoyment, with or without sound. So those are some things that I can leave with you, but just consider the potential of taking people out to see God's creation as something that will benefit others and benefit you yourself.
And I just have to say, we've taken some college groups and even singles groups from church to the star parties or different outings. And it's created such a wonderful environment for just normal interactions. Sometimes those groups, when you're just all in a room together, can be somewhat awkward. You're kind of focused on each other, but when you're out in nature, you're not looking at each other. You're looking at something else and able to